I want to thank everyone for joining me today. You're listening to Next in Q, the inaugural edition of Next in Q, the podcast about contact centers and customer experience and all the things that go along with that. I'm your host. My name is Rob Dwyer. And today, joining me, I'm so very excited. I have the privilege of welcoming Nancy Friedman, who needs no introduction. She
but
is
better give one.
I better give one. You know, Nancy has written, I believe, 9 best-selling books, and for the last, I don't want to say how long, I'll let you say how long, but it's been a long time. You have been a customer service expert, advocate, teacher, facilitator, and have traveled all over the globe. You've been in all kinds of different media. I mean, I could go on and I could quote all the channels that you've been on, the Today Show and things like that. Let's just start with Oprah. You've been on Oprah. So Nancy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's a privilege to be the inaugural. That's a hard word to say. I would have said the first show, but inaugural, if you can say inaugural better than I do, that's great. And I am very, very proud. Our relationship, while not terribly personal, goes back a long time. Telephone Doctor is about 35 years old. So you were right in saying, and you know, when I look back, and I did the other day, I don't want to say we were the first in customer service, but we were, if not the first, we were one of the very first companies exposing, for lack of a better word, how important it was to be in customer service, give good customer service. Now there's, plenty of people to choose from, but we had an advantage by being the first. Our competition was the computer. I mean, when we would call people and say, "Oh, we don't have time for customer service. We just got a new computer. This whole computer thing's coming in, and the box is this big." And anyway, bottom line, thanks for having me, and we'll make this hour fun, or however long it happens to be.
Well, thank you. And before we really get it, because I want to dive into the history a little bit, but I do need to address something right up front. So we're in St. Louis. I'm in St. Louis. You're in St. Louis. But I heard a nasty rumor that you're a Cubs fan. Is that true?
Stop. Born and raised. And I'm so tired of when I say, yes, I'm a Cubs fan. And the simple answer I get from everybody is, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Anyway, I forget what year it was that they won the series. And that's the highlight of my life. I couldn't name you 3 players, okay? But I am a diehard Cub fan. And I think that's loyalty when you really don't know a lot about it. But yeah, I am a Cub fan in a Cardinal helm. The whole house is, St. Louis Cardinals. And I root for them when they're not playing the Cubs.
Yeah, I get it. I grew up rooting for the Royals, actually. I'm a transplant as well. I came from Kansas, and so I understand exactly where you're coming from. Being in Cardinal country, it's fun to watch the Cardinals. They're great. It's amazing tradition here, but
yeah, it is. The Chicago Cubs have a phenomenal following. There's about 6 or 7 now, I think. They have a good following in all over. Anyway, thank you for bringing it. You have warmed my heart. I did buy a Cub flag when they won, so if you want to come see it, you can see it.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. So you grew up in Chicago. So tell me more about, young Nancy.
Well, it's funny. That's a great question, because when I was being interviewed, somebody wanted tips for interviewing. And I said, well, ask somebody, tell me more about yourself. And if they go, "Oh, what do you want to know?" or they have to think about where they're going to start, that's not a good answer for an interview question. Well, what do you want to know? So you said, tell me more about Nancy. My answer is, how much time do you have? Born and raised in Chicago. Yeah, born and raised in Chicago. My husband and I were married very, very young. He and my brother bought a radio station in San Diego, California. And then a few years after that, we bought our second radio station here in St. Louis, Missouri. Bottom line, I've worked with my husband since forever. And people ask us all the time, how do you do it, Nancy? You work with him, you sleep with him, you eat with him, you go on the weekends 24/7. How do you do it? And Dick has always said, without missing a beat, we didn't know it shouldn't work. So we've worked together for a long time. That's not for everybody, husband and wife, I can tell you that, because there are ups and downs and good and bad, but it works for us. And even here working at home now remotely, it's still working for us. So we're even together more.
Yeah, I think we all are recognizing that things have been a little bit different this past year and a half now. But certainly, if you've got that great relationship already, it makes that a little bit easier, I think.
Well, there has to be just one person who has the bottom line. That's when you're working with anybody. There's just, there has to be just one person. I told a friend of mine who's a big woman's liber, and she asked me, who makes the bottom line decisions? Man and woman here, what goes on? And I said, well, I told him he should make the bottom line decision. And he said, yeah. And she said, yes, but you made that decision. So if you get the gist of that, she was a big woman's liver. Doesn't matter to me. We work well together. Anyway, after we bought the station in St. Louis, Dick created a company called Weatherline, the dial-in Weatherline system. So if you were around in St. Louis in the 80s and the 90s, you probably dialed 321-2222, which gave you the time, temperature, and weather. And that became the largest private provider of weather by phone information in the country. We had over 150 cities after about 15, 20 years, sponsored by a local bank or supermarket or chiropractor or something. And that was our revenue. They sponsored it. And a radio station in that particular city would record it for us. And that became a very successful business until the cell phone. Until the cell phone.
Yeah.
The cell phone came in and you could get your weather on your clock and your watch and, in the cell phone. It divvied out it, but we had a fabulous 30-year career of owning that particular company, Weatherline Incorporated. During our stint at Weatherline, I happened to pick up the phone and call my insurance agent. And whatever question I asked to the people who asked, it was beyond horrible. It was, I don't know, she's not here, nobody can help you, I'm new, which is always a great excuse. And so I hung up and I thought, I don't want to be treated like this. So I called Michael, the insurance guy, back and I said, cancel all my policies. He said, what happened? I said, your people stink. They're so rude, they're so rough, they're so unfriendly, they're so on. I said, I just don't want to be treated like that. He said, well, you're right. He says, when I call your office, Weatherline office, he says, I'm treated like a king and I'm not even a customer. I said, Michael, we treat our wrong numbers better than you treat your customers. And he said, would you come and show my guys what you guys do? And I did. I don't think there were 15 people there. I said things like, in our office, we say please, and one woman's writing down as fast as she can. As we say thank you, we say you're welcome. We say we'll find out for you. Those are the things we do. And as I was walking out, the president of the insurance agency said, thank you very much, Nancy. We really learned some new things. I couldn't believe that. I came home to my husband and I told him what happened. He said, well, don't ever be surprised, Nancy. Nobody's ever showing them. Part two to this story is that evening we went out to dinner with a client from Davenport, Iowa, who had a Weatherline set up. And I told him that story, thinking nothing of it. And the next day he called me and he said, I've been thinking about what we talked about last night, Nancy, and you're right. From president to maintenance, you should be trained. Would you come to my newspaper and train my people? And I said, sure, Bob. How many people do you have, dear? He said, 300. I looked at my husband. I said, now look what you got me into. I married the can-do man. And he says, you can do it, Nancy. So I wrote a program and flew up to Davenport, Iowa, and delivered the first program to the Quad City Times in Davenport, Iowa. And when I was done, the editor of the Quad City Times walked up to me and he stuck his finger in my face and said, you're very good. You sure got all the cures. I'm going to call you the doctor. I'm going to call you the telephone doctor. I came running home to Dick. I said, Dick, some guy called me the telephone doctor. What'll we do? He said, let's go get it registered. We're going to have some fun. So we've been having fun ever since, Rob. I know it's a long story, but it fills me with such pride to just tell that little story. That such an accident of not being treated nice got me a multi-million-dollar business of helping companies communicate better with their customers.
Yeah, it's a fabulous it's a fabulous story. It's funny. I was just last week, I was talking with our CEO Rob Nolan, who you know,
Yes.
and he, I was telling him how excited I was that I was going to have you on the podcast, and he was like, "Man, I remember when we had her VHS tapes, like the cart with the VCR, like so."
Yep.
Here
Yeah.
it is, right?
I'm glad you didn't say. I remembered when we had our 8 millimeter. Yeah,
So
those two.
so let's talk about that, right? I mean, you've been around long enough to see this transformation in the way that training is delivered within organizations. So how did it start? Obviously, you were in person for that first meeting in Davenport, but tell me about how that kind of grew over the years and what challenges you ran into.
Well, the best part is we didn't run into any challenges. The best part is I don't care if they have two cans and a string. We've got the channel. We've got the content is king. Content is king. So whatever way the world wants to deliver content, we can deliver it. It did start out, we came in at the very tail end of 8 millimeter. So there were these huge reels. And believe it or not, we found out that people were showing the reels and taping with a big camera our video, which was illegal, of course. They were videotaping our 8 millimeter reels and piracy. But anyway, after the reels came, then came VHS, and then, as you reminded me earlier, beta and
Yep.
video, and then DVD, and now we're online with serviceskills.com. So it has we've had every phase that you can possibly deliver content with at customer service, which serviceskills.com is our e-learning platform, and it delivers to thousands and thousands of clients across the country. It's just a fun way to learn, as you well know. And contact centers have been, if it wasn't for the contact and call centers around the country early on, as they came on board, I don't know that we'd be doing as well, Rob. They were a huge part of our success, and I'm still friends with, like yourself, with so many of them that came on board 25, 30 years ago, which doesn't mean we're old. It just means we're good, strong.
And for those people that aren't aware, you star in the videos. It's not just you, right? You have people that are playing roles, actors, which makes me want to ask about this other career that you have. I understand that you've actually got a career in stage. So tell me more about that.
I was very fortunate. When we moved to San Diego to buy the radio station, I was one unhappy puppy. Moved away from my parents with a newborn baby, had no friends down there. My husband was working almost 24/7, and I'm alone. You can only just, do so much. Anyway, I said to Dick, I'm going to go crazy. I've got to do something. And I happened to see I don't think it was an inch wide little ad in the neighborhood news in San Diego, and it just said Midway School provides evening acting classes. Okay, it was free. I'll go. So I
Sure.
went, and to make a very long story short, within 15 minutes I was just hooked. Now I've always enjoyed, obviously, being on stage, what's the word, amateurish, if you will, with friends, etc. But this was going to be a little bit bigger, and something it was like a fish in water where the hook just got under and you just got dragged in. This was at Midway School for the Dick used to call it Midway School for the Criminally Insane. But we had so much fun, and we did a program there. And then, if you're familiar with San Diego, they have the Old Globe Theater there, which is a huge, big, famous thing. And I was lucky enough to get a part in that when I auditioned for it. And that was awesome. And then we did a few more programs, and we moved to St. Louis, and Dick said, hey, I can't even, Cervantes Center. Remember the Cervantes Center downtown?
I don't remember it. That's before my time, I think.
Stop. It's okay. It was new. It was brand new or just coming. Anyway, they finally built a theater in there. And the first show was going to be Nobody Loves an Albatross, starring Gig Young. And you may not remember him, but he was he would be the Paul Newman or the Brad Pitt of today. And he was a very good looking famous, famous, famous actor at that time. And I want to say 80s or 90s. I don't remember exactly. Maybe 70s. I don't remember. But anyway, so I got the part of him in the same show, Nobody Loves an Albatross, at the Cervantes Theater. And Dick became very good friends. And that led me to, I don't know, it was just one thing led to another. And it wasn't a hobby, because it's not that I belong on stage, but I love being on stage. I mean, it gives me a thrill, which is why the speaking career has filled every emotion of being, quote, on stage as I could get.
Yeah, I grew up, when I was in high school, I loved acting, and I did a little bit when I was in college, and so that struck me, and I wonder how much you think some of those skills that people learn when they're learning acting, regardless of their age, how much of that translates then into the customer service world, particularly for people who are on the phone.
150%. I just wrote down, theater experience should be asked to every applicant in any position, in my opinion. You have, what type of theater experience, and it could be music, it could be dancing, it could be cheerleading, it could be theater, some sort of public, if you will, experience that you performed in front of people. One of my interview questions is, tell me what type of theater experience you've had. And anybody who had some sort, doesn't have to be long or deep, but some sort of theater experience, understood about listening skills, they understood about eye contact, they understood about sympathy, empathy, they understood that it takes a village, it takes everybody to make it great. The guy that's pulling the curtain, and the lighting guy, and the sound guy, everybody takes a part in one production, and nobody should be better than the other. The big star couldn't do it without the sound guy or the light guy. The light guy can't do it without people. So every single technique that you learned, if you had any sort of a theater experience, I don't care if it was in high school or what, something you retained made you good. And I know that you've got some skills that you're better at than other people. So that had to have 150%.
Yeah, I agree. So parents, put your kids in theater, even if it's just a summer program. They'll learn valuable things about communicating.
Well, and I told my kids, as they went through high school and college, I don't care if it's just one, but take some sort of theater class. Told my granddaughter the same thing. Don't go through high school without taking one theater class. I made it semi-mandatory. I think it should be, because chemistry and all those high-end things that they can't understand and usually flunk should be replaced with people skills, which is what theater is.
Right. So when I think about your theater, I'm just curious, what was your favorite show? I mean, what was your favorite character to play?
Well, that's a good question. I've never really analyzed that. I mean, I've done so many. If you're into theater, you love it all, and each show becomes your new favorite, or you don't try out for it usually. I've seen that question asked to some of the big stars, and they find it difficult to say too. Even they may have won an Oscar for it, but that may not be their favorite show. It's their favorite show because they won an Oscar, but they may have enjoyed playing grandma or grandpa somebody, even in a smaller part.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved every show and all the people in it, and it was just part of my life. And every once in a while, when we watched CBS the other morning and they were doing the Wicked show, I'd never seen Wicked. I said, I want to see Wicked. You just want to go back on stage. Well, I don't sing, I don't dance. So I'm limited to either straight or comedy acting. But it's fun. It was a very big part of my life, and I enjoyed it.
That is fantastic. So let's talk a little bit more about customer service, right? Yes. A lot of the people who are listening to this podcast are involved in some way in customer experience, or maybe they're involved in contact centers, or maybe they're just unfortunate enough to know me and feel sorry for me and listen to this podcast. And for those that fall into that final category, thank you. Thank you for being around and listening. I appreciate you just as much as everyone else. But, you know, we've seen a lot of changes in technology when we think about customer service, but I'm wondering from your perspective, are there changes in customer service and how we handle things, or has that really just remained the same?
Well, you're asking, I won't say the wrong person, but I haven't changed a tip, technique, skill in 30 some odd years. They all work. They work then. A friend of mine said, you know, Nancy, if something was right 30 years ago, it's right today. So I don't see any huge difference in the way I treated people 30 years ago or today. It's the same skills. It's the smile. It's the happy to talk to you. It's the right wording. It's listening. It's everything. Now, technology is another story. That's
Sure.
going to change forever. But there's some things that don't change. You know, sun's always going to rise in the east and set in the west.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm wondering, since we have seen the technologies change, and we've seen expectations change in a lot of ways, but maybe not the expectation of how we get treated. What do you think today is, you know, maybe the biggest frustration that people are running into that would be easy to solve?
And that's a great question, because as you were talking, I'm thinking, I know what the biggest problem is now is we're all in a rush. Just me with, I don't know if you heard the conversation. I was talking with the call center lady, and she, you know, she told me twice, hang on a second. And that frustrated me to no end, because nothing takes a second. Nothing.
Right.
Nothing takes a second 100 years ago, and nothing takes a second today. It's just, that's what I
It's
mean by
true.
it's right then, it's right now. So all of our telephone doctor service skills, tips, ideas, skills, and techniques that are out there can be and will be used forever, and have been used since the beginning. What has changed is the expectancy of the customer, myself included, because I don't like to wait, you know,
Right.
and being put on hold is the number remains. It was 20 years ago when I did the survey. It remains the number one frustration of American public, being put on hold. So that's why we created the simple thing of tell the person how long it's going to be. People don't mind holding as much if you're honest with them. And hang on a second, I'll be right back is a big fat fib. So how can I trust you to handle my client, my company, my whatever you're going to be, if you're telling me, you know, just hang on a second, I'll be right back. It's a very difficult line to change, but it can be done.
Right, right. So that is absolutely, I agree with you, right? Hold and just I think people's patience
Yeah,
as,
the patience, mine included, has shrunk quite a bit. Quite a
yeah,
bit. Everybody's in a hurry. They want it today. I mean, look how I've heard people swear because they can't find something on Google fast enough.
right.
That's what it has become. The techniques haven't changed, but you're right, the expectancies have.
Yeah, I mean, even when you think about, right, just receiving things and shopping and how that plays out, right? Now we can get things on Amazon and have it delivered tomorrow, and
Right.
people's expectations are that, you know, things are going to happen more quickly than they've happened in the past. Where, you know, 30 years ago, you could order things like, you know, in that J.C. Penney catalog, but it
Right.
wasn't going to show up tomorrow.
Right. Right. Well, and you know, you're bringing up such great topics, because the call center people are there to help you. All right. They get up in the morning thinking, thank God I've got a job. I'm here to help. So sometimes the customer is a little testy. Now, I use the you get more with sugar than you do with vinegar technique when I need something. Unless I get an answer that is so ridiculously, I don't like to use the word stupid, Find another word that substitutes stupid.
Not great. Not
Okay,
great.
that's great. It again, if you're gonna be doing something else, let's tell the caller that online that, you're gonna hear silence, but I am here, and it'll take me a minute or two. I mean, all the frustrations go down. This is gonna take me about 3 or 4 minutes. I need to go to another screen, and I need to ask my supervisor. All the frustrations go down. Hang on a second, I'll be right back. And silence on the phone are two biggies, because after 30 seconds, I say, hello, are we disconnected? No, I'm just entering some notes. I'm thinking, why didn't you tell me? I mean, they do it every single day and they don't realize it. And that's where I believe we can help with call centers. They do it in and out.
Yeah,
I probably could not do their job physically. That's not the
right.
point. The point is I work with enough people to understand that words do matter. It's not what we say. Your mother was right. It's how we say it.
Yeah, I believe there's a tendency in the contact center world, and it's for people that aren't familiar with contact centers. I mentioned the pace of technology. Contact centers are early adopters of technology in ways that people don't realize. Like contact centers are using bleeding edge technology, whether it's telephony, whether they're using machine learning or AI in a variety of different ways. And the systems that these agents have to use, the computer literacy that is required of them today is really intense. I mean, you have to be able to navigate multiple systems often, and lots of technology providers are trying to make that easier by providing solutions to simplify the navigation piece. But when you spend too much time focused on the technology and how to find the right answer, how to take care of this particular issue, the piece that often falls between the cracks is how we communicate that while we're doing that, because the customer does not know, hey, this is the system that they're in, and it's going to take a while to update a record, and then you're going to have to go 3 screens over and look at this other thing, and then I've got to update some notes over here. Like the customer or whoever's calling, they don't understand what's going on behind the scenes unless that agent is telling them.
Right. And the big word you left out was the customer doesn't care.
That's absolutely true.
So, what is that saying? The customer doesn't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So, yes, you and I know the intricacies of working at a contact center. And oh my God, there's 3 screens. There's this, there's a lot of drop down scripts. There's this, there's that. Mr. Joe America, Mr. and Mrs. America, they don't know and they don't care. I got a problem. You need to solve it.
Absolutely.
Now, if somebody said to them, Mrs. Friedman, please bear with me. This is my 3rd day. I've got 3 screens here. It all just takes, it reduces everything to a little calmer. There's always going to be the one icky poo person that doesn't understand anything. But if I'm told, this is my 1st day, or I'm busy on this a week and it's very confusing, please bear with me. I want to give them all the help I can.
Right.
So you just got to stop pointing fingers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I read something somewhere that I'm curious about, and I know that you can enlighten me. So I read that you don't like caller ID. Speaking of technology, so what's going on with that?
I don't use it. I don't want to use it. It shouldn't be used. I think it's a wonderful piece of equipment. But I will tell you the story that made me think that. We had caller ID at Telephone Doctor. And one day my secretary came in bawling, just elephant tears. She couldn't stop. She was, like hyperventilating. And what happened? Well, what happened is her phone rang, and on the caller ID, it had her fiance's name and her fiance's job phone number. So she picked it up and said something very inappropriate and very personal. And yes, guess what? It wasn't her husband. It was her husband's boss. So she came in hysterical. And I said, stop crying. What is our mantra here? Answer the phone every time the same way. Right. Why would you answer it any differently? Because you saw his number. Oh, I thought it was him. Well, you were wrong, weren't you? And I don't want to go to Vegas with you anymore. So, you know, you cannot be 150% sure that that number that pops up to you is the person you think who it is. It probably will be. But why take a chance? I don't have my cell phone here. My husband just brought my cell phone back. When it says, Dick calling, I don't pick it up and say, what are you wearing? I pick it up and say, hi, it's Nancy. 100% of the time, my calls are answered, hi, it's Nancy. Because every once in a while, somebody has given somebody a phone and say, here, call Nancy, tell her I'll be a little late, use my phone, she'll recognize the number. It's not always true. So just on the safe side, caller ID is wonderful to say, I think it's him. I'm going to assume it. But to pick it up with, hi, Mrs. Smith, and not have it be Mrs. Smith, the person answering feels stupid, you feel stupid. Why take a chance?
That's a great lesson that someone else had to go through the pain to learn. And now we don't have to go through the pain to learn it. We can just learn from their mistake.
And I'm not familiar with the call center enough to know that of all contact centers, do they all have caller ID now?
Yeah, the technology certainly allows that, although typically they're not necessarily, and it depends on a lot of different factors and the technologies that they're using. Most of the time, they will know the phone number that's coming in. But to your point, you can make a lot of assumptions about that. So depending on the way the telephony is set up, that phone number that's coming in could be a phone number that's transferring another call to you. And that's not the phone number they're actually calling from. So there are a lot of variables, and you make a great point. You can't make assumptions. Yes, it may help inform you. It may help give you some additional information, particularly if your telephony system is also interfacing with a CRM to grab customer information and provide you more context and maybe a history of this customer's interactions with you. But you can't make an assumption. That assumption could hurt.
You're so right, Rob.
Right.
I had an interesting thing, and we can get into this topic because you'll know probably more about it than I do, and that's contact centers that use scripts. So I happened to call my cable company a while back, and she was reading the script. And I said, I've got a problem. This isn't working. Oh, Mrs. Friedman, I am so sorry to hear that your whatever it was is not working. My name is Celia, and I will help you. I said, good, Celia. Now, what are you going to do? Well, Mrs. Friedman, and she was reading this. And I finally said to her, will you do me a favor? Mrs. Friedman, I'm here to help you. What can I do for you? I said, turn over the page that you're reading and just talk to me. Pretend I'm your mother. And she said, really? Yeah. So I heard her fuss on something. She said, well, what do you need? I said, that's it. That's what I need. Just be yourself. So scripts are for actors. And for those contact centers, and I hope there's hundreds of them listening, they're okay to use if you will give the employee, as you're hiring them, just a simple little test. Have them read a paragraph in a newspaper or a magazine, and just pretend you're what's his name? Tucker Carlson or whoever it is. Just pretend you're a big announcer on Fox or CNN, and you're delivering this paragraph, and I don't care what the paragraph is. Well, the good CSRs, the good people that should be hired, are putting emotion into it and a little bit of up and down and good and bad and a chuckle if it's needed. And because they're reading something new, anchors don't get to pre-read the headlines that come in. Okay, bingo, here it is. It's coming up on the prompter. And yes, they use a prompter, but unless you're following their eyes like I do, you seldom realize that you're reading them. You're reading it. So I worry about companies who use scripts and don't give the people any training on how to read the script, go over it with them, make sure it's right. I could go on a rant, and I don't mean to take over here, but scripts are for actors. And if you're going to use it in a contact center, either train your people or do a hiring process, put in some place that don't give them the script that they're going to read. Give them something they're not going to be familiar with, and then go to what they're expected to read.
Sure. Yeah, and I think there's definitely a balance to be struck as well. So there are certain instances where, yeah, okay, maybe you need to have something scripted out because it's a legal,
Right.
something I need to read, or maybe you find that in certain situations using a very specific phrase works really well, but that freedom to be able to just talk to someone and really just, and I think this is one challenge that we often run into, and that's the listening, right? So just taking a moment to really listen to the other person, to really understand, because you cannot script that.
And that's why role playing, in Nancy's opinion, is not healthy, because the person you're reading the scripting with is not the real customer. The real customer doesn't have your script. They don't have a, so they're going to go off script. And you can't say to them, excuse me, this my script says you're supposed to say such and such. I've got, I'm looking at the script, that you can't do that. So you need to, play along with it. I just had a thought in my mind that went out. The scripting it's important. Put bullet points. I mean, if you want people to list certain things, these are the 8 questions you got to ask these people, I didn't mean this to go into a training session, Rob. You're talking about, if I hadn't had call centers, contact centers in the beginning, I wouldn't be here today. So they're near and dear to me, and anytime I can help them, I'm going to sneeze.
Gesundheit.
That in speaker.
We can. Yeah.
Okay, speaker's done sneezing. Thank you. My husband, when we do videos, he says, leave that in. That's human.
It is very human.
Take out whatever you want to do.
It is very human.
Scripting is an art, not a science. I mean, and I'll tell you the opposite of scripting. If you want to ever watch an actor be interviewed without a script, they're not very good.
Now, there's a very fine line between being able to do something extemporaneously and being able to perform something that you understand. And I think that in the contact centers, the people who are the best, who also tend to have been there the longest, right? So they've learned all of this, and they're able to memorize and react to things in a very natural way because they've done it 1,000 or 10,000 times. Those people are able to understand a structure and a process. This is the structure and the process that I need to follow, while still being able to be agile and react when I get that question out of left field, and I can still answer that question and then also get us back on track so that we can continue to follow the basics of the process, versus someone who may be less experienced really gets thrown by that. Either they just go off the rails because they forget about the process altogether, and they totally get off the rails, or they just don't know how to answer a tangential question.
I don't know if this is allowed, and you can cut this if you want. Have you ever had the opportunity to call Apple Care for your phone if you have an Apple?
I do not have an Apple. I'm a Google guy, so I've got a Pixel. But okay. Go ahead. I'm sure I'll understand.
The Apple Care, when you have a problem with your phone, is beyond. I mean, I don't have words for them, because they have to have some sort of script, and they have a knowledge of, from here to Texas, but they're always playful with you. They're always fun. I mean, and of course they're not getting yelled at. They just have a frustration with their phone,
right?
Which is a little different than, somebody mad and angry and upset. Which, if you want to go into, we can talk about that. I had a couple other notes. I would love to tell you I think I told you in a pre-call that I was contracted for about a 10-city tour with one of the largest companies in the world. Did I tell you that story or not? Anyway.
Let's tell it now. Let's tell it now.
Well, because this will help a lot of the contact centers, especially managers that are listening there. So one of the largest telecommunication companies in the country, in the world, probably. And they found me and they hired me good 25, 30 years ago. And 10 or 15 city tours. And the first one I went to, I was so excited. I really had never been into a contact center. So I sat down. She said, we need you to listen to a bunch of calls and then just sort of just analyze them and tell us what it is. So I did, and we were done about an hour or 2 hours later. She says, well, I said, run me through your hiring process. She's okay. It's pretty strong. It's pretty stringent. We have a keyboarding class. We have a spelling class. We have an English class. We have this, that, and 100 classes, math class, all this stuff. And she stopped. I said, where was your voice test? And I got deer in the headlights. She's, what do you mean? I said, did you talk to these people on the phone ahead of time? She said, well, we didn't. I said, well, we're going to start.
Yeah.
Because they had voices on there that should not have been hired. They were poor English, slurred words. Some of them talked too soft like this, you couldn't understand them. And some of them shouted, they were just all over the place. That you need to put some barriers to, and just, well, how do you do that? I mean, they didn't know how to do it. I would just put them in another room and just pick up the phone. There weren't cell phones at that time, and just call in and say, hi, tell me about yourself. And if they start with, well, what do you want to know? Don't hire them, because if they can't talk about themselves for 20 minutes, how are they going to learn about you? It was an eye-opening experience for them. And to this day, people, when they call me and they say, I got to hire a secretary, I said, the first thing you do is just have a phone interview with them, or a Zoom now is even perfect.
Right.
Like they're doing that. And, there's still people losing jobs because they're sitting, pulling their hair, or they have a nervous habit when they're talking to somebody, or they don't look into the camera, they're still talking to other people while, hi, okay. So.
Yeah. You know what? It all starts with the people, right?
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter what business you're in. It's about the people. It's people business. So if you get the right people, you can work on those other skills.
And how do you get the right people? Because sadly, the people that are interviewing usually tell you what you want to know. I used to watch out for people who say, I love customer service. I'm so good at it. I love customer service. I live customers. I breathe customer service. Okay, thank you. Bye. If you have to sell me on it, I don't think I need you.
Yeah. You know what? It's very interesting to me. I don't think anyone just says, I want to get into customer service business. I mean, it sounds like you kind of fell into this by accident. I know that the contact center business, it was not something that I, thought I was going to college so that I could work in a contact center. That was not the idea.
What did you go to college for?
I went to college for computer science after I went to college for English, philosophy, and art history. And then I realized that none of those are going to get me a job.
Or pay very well, yeah.
Yeah. So I changed. I changed to computer science, and that helped. But I think for most people, right, they end up in this industry, and specifically contact center industry, by accident a lot of times, and then they realize that they really like it for whatever reason. There are a lot of different reasons that people would like that industry, but I think that's how most people end up in it, because I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think most people are thinking, man, I really, I want to work in a contact center. That's just not what most people think of. But then once they get in it, they realize that there are a lot of interesting things, interesting technology, interesting people, a lot of different avenues that you can go.
Isn't there a certain satisfaction when somebody says, thank you, Rob, you were awesome, you helped me so much. I mean, talk about something that you can live on for days, is that big thank you from a client, from a customer. And that's what they should be going for.
Yeah, I mean, you're helping people with whatever issue it is, whether it's they're trying to buy something and they need help, or maybe they've got a problem with something, whatever the case may be, right? They're calling because they need help.
Right.
And you're there, you put a smile on, and you help them. And when you do that really well, absolutely, it's a good feeling that just takes you into the next customer.
Yeah, that's interesting because my third point that I wanted to bring up before this, I don't know how long you want to go, was how important when they pick up that phone is to smile.
Yeah.
Smile before you know who it is. You got it. What does it matter? It's just my mother. It matters a lot. What does it matter? It's just my coworker. It matters a lot. So you and I could probably talk for 3 days about the importance of a smile and how it changes the tone of your voice. And yes, you
It
can
does.
hear it. I don't even want to go. I don't want to make either one of us feel silly. Show me a picture you don't like of yourself, and I'll show you a picture where you're not smiling. It's that
Yeah.
simple.
And it's contagious too, right? It affects your mood, and so when you're talking to someone and you've got that smile on, it helps their attitude, and that is always a good thing. It doesn't matter where they're starting, right? They could be in a good mood to begin with, but if you put them in an even better mood, you can't go wrong there.
You really can. And when somebody says, "Yeah, I got a problem," you should be so excited they call. Oh, you called the right place. You got Nancy, and I'm here to help you. What's up, Mr. Jones? What's going on? And feel like a friend. So many call centers, contact centers, it's so far apart, and they should be like this. They should be together.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, Nancy Friedman, you've been such a joy to talk to today. I mean,
Yes.
I appreciate you so much. I was really excited to ask you to join me on the podcast. And um, when I did, I don't know if you remember your response. So we were chatting on
So this
LinkedIn.
Pope Catholic.
You said it's the Pope Catholic, and I was like, she's in. This is good.
You,
So
you had me at I want you. What is it? Let me pull up. Well, I do appreciate it. And I know that if there's anybody new listening, that we've helped them, and even the quote old timers that have been in it a long time. Sometimes they say to me, I knew that, I forgot about it. Thank you for refreshing. Because I mean, we're telephone doctor and serviceskills.com, which is our e-learning platform with 160, 180 modules. And
oh,
it's really
that's a
a
lot.
very good system, serviceskills.com. And we've got a lot of call centers as clients that have stayed with us for a long time because they got a lot of people on staff that need the training. So,
Sure.
and you mentioned I was a star. I'm not the star. I'm the moon. No, I think I have one series, all telephone doctor, and then I'm in some of the others. But
Yeah.
there's I think 19 series now, and it's all between different people, and some of them are animated, some of them very very cleverly done. If you haven't seen them, you should go get a demo for yourself. The demos are complimentary. I'd love to have you. Just let me know. I'll get you a demo.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, feel free to go check out Nancy's stuff at telephonedoctor.com and serviceskills.com. I can vouch for it. I've seen it. It's really good stuff. We've been a customer, and it is stuff that I even talked to one of our trainers just the other day, and I mentioned your name, and he's like, I still use some of those techniques all the time in training class. So
That's the biggest compliment we can get. Except when they start going back too far. No, I'm glad that they lasted so long. The test of time. All of our techniques have lasted that test of time, which just wonderful to me. Wonderful
They
to me.
have. They
And we
have.
just got my son, who's now president of serviceskills.com. He just emailed me. He says, we just got the highest rating you can get on easiest company to work with.
Oh, nice.
And I
Congratulations. That's
thank you,
great.
because that's the other thing. How easy are you to work with? Do you make people jump over the fence? Anyway,
Sure.
you as a podcast host are exceptional and
Oh, thank you. Gosh.
delighted. Well, you give your guests time to talk, which is sometimes not always the way it's being done, but you have, and I appreciate it. And I certainly hope that the listeners, I know my mother's listening, my father, my brother, I wish they were, Whether there's one person or 1,000 people, I had a good time, and you're a very good host, and this should be a very successful program for you, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's been all my pleasure. Again, I appreciate you joining me. Thank you very much. And
Yep.
we'll talk again soon. Thanks. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.